Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to AFMI's annual Arab Women's Showcase. My name is Donna Khurshid, and I'm the curator of 6 Days, 6 Nights, Revolutionary Arab Women in the Arts, Past, Present, Future. The Arab Film and Media Institute, AFMI, is the first organization of its kind outside the Arab world and hosts the longest running Arab Film Festival in the United States. AFMI was rebranded from the Arab Film Festival in 2017 to fulfill its broader mandate to empower local Arab talent to tell their community stories in their own voices and develop Arab film and media projects. Through film, education, mentorship, and new media, AFMI's mission is to enhance public understanding of Arab culture and provide insight into the beauty, complexity, and diversity that is intrinsic to the Arab world. Welcome, everyone, and without further delay, I would like to introduce you to Dina Naser, the filmmaker and director of Tiny Souls, the film that was made at the Zaatari refugee camp in Jordan. Welcome, Dina. It's a
Hi,
pleasure.
Donna.
Ahlan.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Our pleasure as well. And Dina, I wanted to start off by saying, having watched your documentary when it was first released, it had a profound effect on me, and I'm certain that it did on so many others. And one is left feeling helpless and somehow empty, which brings me to the first thought that I had when I entitled this as In the Eyes of a Child. The main character that you focused on was Marwa, the beautiful young Syrian girl, and her family. And I wanted to start our conversation with this because I can only imagine that for you, having decided to go in and start filming children and the refugees living there, that this shifted your storyline and probably took you in a very different direction. And so if you could tell us a little bit about when you first saw Marwa and how the story started, that you decided from all the families that were living there that she was the one.
Thank you, Donna. Actually, the journey started when I went for the first time to a Zaatari refugee camp back in 2012. I had not imagined that I would start a journey that will last for 5 or 6 years. My intention was actually from the beginning to go and talk to adults, maybe record some sound bites to have a better understanding about what's happening in Syria and the conditions of the people living in the camp and about their journey. And I had just many questions, and I was looking for some answers away from media and reports and all of that. So when I went there, I wanted to talk to adults and record with them and ask them these questions, but people were very vulnerable, very sensitive, and very afraid as well, because they imagined that they will stay for a week or two and eventually they will return back home. And of course, everybody refused to talk to me, and everybody was a bit afraid of me. And I ended up not being able to talk to anyone except children. I was intrigued by the beauty and how open and expressive they are and playful. So I decided, okay, so nobody wants to talk to me, and these children are approaching me, and they were like, we were playing together, so maybe I will talk to them. So I put my camera on and I started to film like simple interviews and ask them like about what happened to their homes, what happened in their journey arriving to Jordan, what they witnessed, what they feel. And during doing many interviews with several kids, I met Marwa. And Marwa, from the first moment, she was very strong girl and open, and she took my hand and took me to her tent and introduced me to her family and her mother and sisters. And we sat in a tent alone, and I started speaking and I'm filming her, and she was really strong and powerful and very expressive for her age. And she was telling me stories, horrible stories with a smile on her face. And that was really, for me, she captured my heart from that moment. And I stayed thinking about her and about her family in specific. I felt there's a special connection that happened in that day. And I went back home. I did some editing for this 3 days visit. At that time, I had a 3 days permission that week. So I stayed like going to the camp and filming with different kids. And I went back home, I edit, and I was looking at the material and trying to create something out of this week. And I was thinking about Marwa all the time and looking at the material and listening again to her words and her story. And yeah, I felt like I needed to come back to visit this girl and check on her and see what's happening and what and how her life will evolve in this camp. So I ended up in a 10 minutes film from this week, and I was sharing it by coincidence to my friend, uh, just out of sharing about what I was doing, and he posted it online, and it went viral, and people were like sharing it like crazy. I was 3 days I didn't sleep from receiving different messages from people asking me. I felt everybody was kind of thirsty to see something different, to see a point of view that is pure and innocent and there is no agenda behind it. And it created actually and created a sense of huge responsibility inside of me that I realized it after a while. But Marwa stayed in my mind, and I decided to go back to visit some of the kids. But my intention was for Marwa and her family, and this is how it started. I started once I go with my camera, the other visit without, and it just happened. It just happened without planning, without really knowing what I was doing, without really imagining that I will follow their journey for a few years. Um, it just happened.
Yeah. As you were mentioning, their innocence is robbed from them due to the inhumane circumstances that they have lived through, witnessing, the situation in Syria at the time. And I feel that, this is obviously reminiscent of all the children, the films we see, documentaries, children in Syria and Gaza and so many different places in the world. And I want to commend you on, showing us another perspective, as you said, something that isn't, first of all, you don't feel there's some kind of censorship. You don't feel that, anything was really planned. And that's why I, felt that you were the person that I wanted to speak with for this segment, entitled, calling it Filmmaker, because I think all of us watching your film, as we, went on your journey with you on the screen, we could see how just from, the first moment when you show the clip of Marwa and her sister, when when you teach them how to use their phone to start filming, and also you show the clip, which I find very touching, the song, we see the translation in English, if I may just read it, that the words are, "Your love is a boundless ocean. Your name is carved into my heart. I will wait a lifetime for you." And I have to say, I think that's where everybody at that moment and the first few minutes are just captivated by the whole story. So thank you for that and for bringing it to the world audience, because these are the stories people need to see from the inside. So, on that note, speaking of the inside, I'm very curious what it was like for you to get permission, and what were the regulations to enter the Zaatari refugee camp, because we could tell from your film that it seemed it was a very sort of tedious procedure, and it's it wasn't an easy one for you. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, as you mentioned, it was a very hard actually process along the way because also um, the management of the camp changed and the process and the procedure along the way also changed. So in the beginning, I had received some help to help me to get permission to access the camp. But later on, I had to manage it by myself. And of course, it's a very secured area, and it has to go through different security measurements and checkups and all of that. And I'm kind of alone, independent. I'm not supported by some kind of TV or a production house or any official entity that will back me up and help me to have this access easily. So it made the whole process, actually, because I'm alone, it was really hard. But I had to follow all the process and wait and learn how to be patient, actually, until I get this permission. So it went in different phases, and also change of process, as long as along the way that the camp was changing and growing and expanding. And of course, in a certain point, I was not able to get a permission, even though I was like waiting for months and months. And therefore, in the middle of the process, I thought, okay, since I'm not able to see them and since I'm not able to access the camp, maybe I should leave a camera with them and see what's going to happen. And it was totally an experimental idea that I was like helpless. I didn't know what to do. So I thought, okay, I took a camera from my home, I gave it to Marwa, and I told her how to turn it on and off, and that's it. And I had no expectations, to be honest, whatsoever about the material, what they're going to share with me, and it worked. And I received a beautiful material that I felt
Mhm.
it should be included in the narrative of the film, because the camera for them, it's a toy. And because they always see me with a camera and we always play and we take pictures and we film together, so they were really happy that I left with them a camera and they were playing as well. But it was very important for me because I felt it's it's away from my influence, it's away from my camera influence, and they are on their own, on their space. They have the ultimate freedom of expressing what they want to express, what kind of conversation they want to share, how they want to play. And it was really pure. I felt this material was very pure and raw. And I knew from the minute I saw the material, I knew it will be included in my narrative. But it was very hard also process to find the right way to structure the story and have this material, because it's also related to time. And I was trying to work in my edit, in my storyline, chronological order, and therefore the material I filmed, it was like in 2012, and their material came in 2000, in the middle of the, maybe 2013, 2014. So I was trying to find the right way to structure my material and their material and try to find the best flow for the story. So that was kind of a successful experiment in regarding of having access and not having access to the camp. Um, yeah.
Thank you. And also, it was beautiful, as you're mentioning, that their enthusiasm to record their lives, and you could see the yearning, in their faces and their expressions as they took you everywhere and made you a part of their daily, everything they did, from their little brother having his bath to, them speaking to their family in Syria each time online, which was also very, heartbreaking for many of us, because each time we would watch that, we wondered, would they be able to reconnect again? So
Mm,
really, it also, I think, speaks volumes, showing how, as you also have elaborated already, that how children, when they're living in a time like that, in such circumstance, that sadly they become like, they're carrying the, you felt Marwa was carrying the world on her shoulder,
mm.
and they already know too much, and it really speaks volumes. And you really did a, beautiful job at bringing that to us as well. And going back to the refugee camp, also with your origin being Palestinian, Dina, did you I imagine you also had some personal reasons of perhaps wanting to choose this as your subject. Does that?
Actually, yeah, maybe subconsciously, because I realized in the middle of the process that all the stories I've heard from my father translated into reality for me. And most of the pictures I also saw about 1948 and how people were fleeing and living in such hard conditions, it's just a reality in 2016, as if nothing changed. It's just some countries' names and borders. So I think it was kind of subconscious that led me to be in the camp for a few years, trying to understand also what was happening in Palestine and the effect of the war on the people, because it's the same, it's just a different map, let's say. And I think I found some answers
Mhm.
about about Palestine, about my parents, and about the trauma that people carry for the rest of their life. Not only Palestinian, I think everyone who faces such circumstances in their life, war or fleeing or losing a home,
Mhm.
it's a trauma that they carry, and they end up paying the price for it, for a decision that they are not part of. And I think that was kind of leading me to be there and leading me to spend more time there.
Mhm.
Uh, Watching Marwa, Aya, and Mahmoud as well, carrying these horrible stories, and I can see how they are traumatized, and I can see how this will affect the rest of their life. And even though they're very cheerful and they deal with the hardship of the camp with a smile, that was very powerful for me, and that was very inspiring. But in the end, it's a place where nobody should be. It's a place where nobody on earth should be living in a refugee camp. And but unfortunately, that's the reality that we are witnessing in the region over and over again.
Yes. Thank you. Did you also feel day by day, were there, I mean, did different obstacles come up for you each day or every, so often as you return to film? Or was it the same thing as far as, did you find you had like, maybe new restrictions at different times, different periods, depending on what the situation was in Syria? Because,
Of course, yeah. I mean, it was never easy to be there. Every time I go to the camp, I may be in my mind, I have some ideas or I have kind of a plan, but when I reach there, I feel like my mind is paralyzed and I cannot do anything. And I spent like almost 2 years in this state, being there and not really being able to be there. Uh, it was very intense and hard to be in such situation and witness that and feel helpless that you're not able really to help or change or do anything. And the process for me was very intense, that until I found the moment where I can pull myself together and decide, okay, so now you can do it. Now you will kind of find your power in a way. And my source of power was coming from them, because every time I collapse and every time I feel like I cannot do it and every time I question myself why I'm there, it's hurting me, it's hurting my everything. It's hurting my mental, my emotional, my physical, my everything. It was so hard. And but of course, my source of power and inspiration was completely coming from them, and that what really makes me keep on doing what I was doing. Um, and the whole journey was full of obstacles and full of challenges and full of misery. It was really heartbreaking to witness all of that and imagine that this kind of reality existing just a few hours away from my home, and nobody knows about it really, and nobody is aware of what kind of situation that people are living in. Um, so I was very blessed that I crossed paths with Marwa and Aya and her family, because I felt there was a kind of a universal power that sent me to be there and meet this family, and we were helping each other in a way. We were helping each other, yeah.
As you're saying, Dina, that we also, that's what was so, like I said, I loved about your film, is that we also could feel what you were going through as well. Though you were behind the camera, just listening to your voice. And I loved your connection that you had with the children, and especially with Marwa. And I think that also played a role in why, they were ready to also walk you through everything that was going on. Um, I wanted to also ask you about the last day when you returned, and sadly, once again there was delays in getting there in the morning, and you found the family had gone and were sent back to Syria. My question, if you possibly could, answer, is I think many of us that live on the outside watching this and knowing what happened at that moment, are curious as to how, anyone could be sent back at that time as such a risk to their lives. Um, is there anything you can tell us about that, that maybe just, we may not know?
Actually, it was also shocking for me to know that people were sent back to the war zone. And I've never imagined that this kind of procedure is happening until it happens with Marwa and her family. And because I was following them and I knew that there was kind of investigation that happens with Muhammad, the brother that was staying with the family in the camp, I knew that there's a certain tension that is happening, and there is kind of an eye on them, but I didn't imagine that in one day they will be sent back. And when Marwa told me on the phone, they were like giving them some days, and Muhammad was going back to in the investigation, and they didn't know in a way, but they were kind of informed that they will have to leave it at any time, so they have to be ready until that day that they were deported. And it was shocking. I didn't know that this procedure is legal. And when I tried to research and understand exactly what happened, I realized and I knew that it's illegal to send a person who flee from a war zone, to send them back. But in the end, the UN was there, and they had no power in monitoring this process in a way. And because of Muhammad and his investigation process, it can also fall under security reasons. Under security reasons, this deportation was happening. But to be honest, I don't have an answer, and I don't know what was right and wrong, and I don't know how could this happen with the existence of all these NGOs and all this humanitarian presence in the camp. And it's, of course, for my mind, I can imagine like they can take the man or they can send back the man, but a mother with 3 kids is just, they cannot be threatened any security, I imagine.
With you from making this documentary?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, what do you feel is your greatest lesson that you carry with you now throughout your life after making this documentary?
Well, never take anything for granted. That's for sure. Yeah, I'm grateful for everything in my life, no matter how hard it is, or sad, or whatever kind of circumstances, is just we need to learn that we have so many great things and so many how you say it, gifts that we have, and yeah, never take anything for granted and be appreciated, that for anything that comes your way, and yeah, feel the value of everything. Actually, that was very important for me to understand, and also um, have a wider perspective of the reality that we are living in, that most people don't know. Plus, also, it was very important for me to present a story that anyone, anywhere can relate to them, regardless of the frames that people put under refugees or under the Syrian crisis, or it was very important that we relate to each other on the human level, and that we can connect with each other beyond flags and religions and races and all of that. And I hope that the story of Tiny Souls and the story of Marwa uh, broke some kind of barriers towards what's so-called refugees, and maybe opened the perspective of people of accepting each other and getting close to each other and deal with each other as a human to human, soul to soul. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I mean, like I said, Marwa is somebody that I think lives in all our hearts. Anyone who has watched your film, without a doubt, and hopefully, if anyone is tuning in and is going to watch our conversation before watching the film, I think they will very clearly see, how captivating she was. And on that note, could you please give us some updates about her life and her family, as I'm sure you have stayed in touch with them? I'm hoping.
Actually, no. After the deportation, I lost them for almost like 2 years, and I didn't hear back from them any news. And it was really a scary period for me, because I was doing the film and I didn't know where they are and what happened to them, and are they alive? And during all this research period, I've never managed to reach to them. And one day, back in 2019, yes, I received a phone call in September, and I look to my phone and I see Siri, and I don't know, like, who's that? And I answered, and it was Marwa. And Marwa was very, very happy and very excited, and she was inviting me to her wedding. That's why she was reaching out to me. And of course, now she's married. The family are good. She was not able to talk a lot on the phone, and she told me, "Yeah, I'll tell you later about the details." But both of her brothers had to escape, and she was not able to give me details because she was afraid to talk on the phone. And yeah, but she was very excited about the wedding, and her new life and her new journey that was about to begin. And they are okay, they are alive, and they are back to their village, back to their home. Uh, they're good. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. That's wonderful for all of us to hear. If you could tell us also, is this something that you have found that you returned to the camp after they were living there, or is this a chapter that you have closed as far as in your storytelling?
To be honest, it wasn't kind of a decision that I didn't want to go back. In a way, I wanted to go back, but I felt I can go back because my last visits to the camp were very intense, and I had some issues with the police there, and I had to sign a fine if I'm late there, or I had some issues there, and I felt I reached my limit. I reached my limit in dealing with everything there, with the police, with the situation, with the conditions, and going back there to the same house and not seeing Marwa was very hard for me. But also I went there and I saw another family living in the same house with another kids, and another story is there. It was a very heartbreaking and emotional for me to go back to the same place. But also I felt there was kind of the end of the journey, but not because I decided that, because everything around me actually decided that. Mm. Yeah, I think so.
So, Dina, so now just lastly, we would love to know what you're working on and what does the future have in store for us coming from you?
I still search. I'm still searching. I wrote actually a short fiction story, and I would love to experience working with fiction. I thought maybe I would take some time away from documentary and try to experience different genre of filmmaking. So yeah, I wrote a fiction story about a little girl as well, and I'm trying now to work on the story and the development of the character. And as well, I started to write an idea about a documentary about a place, but it's still like a mix in my mind. And to be honest, like now, it's not the most inspiring times that we live in, so it's a bit tough also to really find the inspiration and the motivation to start another journey. But I'm always thinking, I'm always searching, and I think now I will focus on this fiction story and see how it will evolve.
Thank you so much, Dina, for being with us.
Shukran. It's my pleasure to be with you.
And really, honestly, like I said, it's one of the most moving documentaries I personally have ever watched. And I'm sure that many people have the same feeling. And, you know, this will always live in our hearts, especially those of us from that part of the world. So I want to thank you also for your humanity and for sharing your journey with us and the story of Marwa and her family as well. Thank you so much, Dina. It was our
Thank
pleasure.
you so much, Donna, and I hope, yes, the story will reach to many hearts and souls through also your platform. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dina.
Alan. Good night.